Hello and welcome to the Data Driven Supply Chain Podcast. We have with me my usual partner in crime, Yacine. And the topic today that we have is a little bit controversial and spicy. We're going to be discussing remote work and how does remote work in supply chain and manufacturing? Does it even work? Does it not work? And to just put things a bit in perspective, there's the far right side in remote work, kind of headed by Elon Musk and people around that, which is like almost remote work is banned unless there's a strong reason to basically be working from home or working remotely. It's all in the office. And then there's a left wing, which is usually a lot of software companies, GitLab, Shopify, and others. And on this side, it's like, hey, it's going to be only remote, fully remote. You can work from anywhere in the world you want. And there's a lot of company out of Silicon Valley, especially tech companies that are sort of siding here. And then there's the mainstream silent majority, which I guess now is tilting more towards the hybrid side of things. Like, hey, we don't want to be fully remote because we think we should meet sometimes. And we don't want to come to office every day because if you do that, your people are going to quit and they're going to leave. So they kind of took this middle path, which is 2 days in the office, 3 days, and something around that. So yeah, I know, Yasin, you have very bold opinions about this and you've had them over the years. A lot of people have noticed it as well. So what do you think? Does remote actually work or not work? And you've been running a company fully remote for some time. So what's your like initial thoughts on remote work?
Yeah. Just to give context about what we're even talking about this, if you see on our previous episode, there's a record team of like labor shortage because this is one of the biggest challenge for some of the company that we've talked to, that we work with, ultimately what happened is that they try to give perks, right? So to attract more people and stuff. One of this perk is hybrid kind of environment where you can work from home, you can work in the factory or the office if you want to. This came up to my mind because last 2 days ago I was in a big office with some big executive in a big company, and they've asked me, as a remote company, how do you make it work? Let's say for us, a big co. And then they were saying all of the problem that they had with remote, which I knew they would have based on their setup. So that's kind of hypnosis. And to give context, we don't often talk about the company in the podcast, but Axia is a fully remote company. We barely have an office. It's a kind of a virtual one. And the whole company is operating remote. I'm a very, very high, adamant supporter of remote. I think it's the way forward for in most instances currently. What I said to this executive is, in your setup, absolutely not. Don't go to hybrid. I think hybrid is a big mistake. I was advising this executive in a company that is manufacturing physical thing, to, instead of trying to do the middle middle ground, to go fully in office. And the thing is, where they are, their main facility is like an hour drive with like a lot of traffic from the nearest, the biggest city. It's not easy to get in. There's like nothing outside, so it's its own bubble. And in my mind, instead of trying to do this middle thing, you go full spin on being making an awesome in-office culture. And this thing is possible. It's not like it's impossible. Even in software, some company decide to go there. Let's say Google decide to do that. Apple, they make like big HQ and stuff. I think it was needed when they were getting started, right? And then the culture built from this point on. And I think it's very difficult to change a culture that was made first in office, and then you try to switch it to like fully remote. In the case of Google, Apple, that's what happened, and Apple has hardware, so it's even harder. I think Google could could technically go fully remote and it will still work. I think they could make this transition. It will be hard, but if you have an anchor point in your company, which is the thing that you're making is physical, and in some people absolutely have to be there and have to do night shift and stuff like that to make the thing run, like it's happening in manufacturing company. I think in this particular case, you should not try to make an hybrid type of company. I think in the long run, it will hurt. It will hurt the company. So that's my, I put it out there. This is my pretty radical stance on this subject. And I've talked to a lot of manufacturer, both small and then bigger company that was manufacturing thing. And my assessment of this is that, yeah, absolutely not. You try to make it like the most awesome in-office culture. So that's my
Cool.
my stance.
Cool. Very interesting you say that. Okay, so there's the mainstream folks, right? So the ones who are on the shop floor bending metal and doing all of the labor work that is sort of required to produce. And then there's the back office staff, right? So you have your procurement team, supply chain teams, marketing, sales that don't necessarily have to be in the office. And we know there's a labor shortage on this side as well, because they're being poached constantly by technology companies and other companies where they do get these perks. So what advice would you give about this part of the staff, right? Should they be in the office? Should they be on hybrid? I know you have a strong position against hybrid, but how do company executives navigate with these positions? Because they don't really need to be in the office, and them not being in the office or having this sort of like create everybody else these second degree citizens or something in the company where they start to feel this complex. So yeah, help me untangle this part of how
Yeah,
do you
for
think
sure.
what should be done.
I'll start first with like why do I think in most cases hybrid is a complete mistake. And the executive was telling me like stuff that I've heard like 100 times over, with like, because the pandemic was very rich in company like dabbling in hybrid work and stuff. So I've seen the same issues, and you can see these workplace kind of like almost collapsing on themselves, because it's as if like everybody is disconnected, and you could, when you talk to the folks, they are kind of not in sync with the others. However, when you talk to a fully remote company that completely embrace it, and you talk to any one of the folks, usually they are well connected together, even to the point where two people that never met in person, when they get together, they know everything that they has to do with the work that the other people are doing. So what's up with hybrid work that make it so disconnecting like this and making people feel like outsider? Not, it doesn't, it's not about the proximity, the physical proximity. It's about the communication. That's kind of all there is to it. And if you look at the two extreme, when you have a fully remote company, to make it work, absolutely, even if you do it by mistake and you try to make it very synchronous type of remote work, let's say people always are in meeting and stuff, at some point people are like, this sucks to be always in meeting. So the next thing you do is either you go back in fully in office and you say screw it to remote, or you figure out how to make it work without having always to be synchronous, because then you can actually reap the benefit. And the main benefit of remote work is asynchronous communication, and a heavy bias toward documentation. When this happens, you need a way less meetings to get in sync with your colleague, because everything is documented. And if you don't like that, if you don't like asynchronous communication, if you don't like to document your stuff, you like to be on the action, on the move all the time, what will happen is you're going to get filtered out from this company, and you're going to gravitate toward that in-office type of culture where like, it's always like this, and you don't need to document as much because the information live on the mesh around like the office kind of. So what ends up happening is that people that are fit for remote and that like this asynchronous communication will be there, and it worked really well for setup where you don't have to be there to see the stuff that you're making, right? So in a machine shop, or like if you're making boats, plane, you have to see the things, right? There's no robot that you can control yet from your home. Um, if you're making a software, however, you're not going to see the software if you're there physically. You're going to see the dude looking at the screen, looking at the software. But to look at the software, you're either going to have to look at the screen or you look at the screen. But the software lives in between you and like some ether, right? So if you're far away, what it do create is you don't have any option but to document, to communicate through tasks, through like Slack, Discord, whatever, which ends up making the software much more well documented, just because there's this constraint that is there. So that makes the thing work for this particular use case. And now you have hybrid, and usually when we say hybrid, is not like the remote people having the perk of having an office, right? Because that is also hybrid. You can get that, and this is fantastic. That sort of hybrid toward the remote is absolutely amazing. You can get that by giving people like some money to get some office and then just be there, and then a small one, or you do like Shopify and you have a bunch of coffee shop around like hubs, and then people can go there and then they meet together. It's all good. There's no problem with that. The problem is like when you have an absolute requirement to be in the office, and then you try to push some liberty of being remote. Because what will happen here in this particular hybrid, which doesn't overlap with the other kind of hybrid, is that the people in office will not document more their stuff, right? They will communicate how it's beneficial in office to communicate, which is synchronously, which is fast-paced. And the
Yeah, they
people
don't
that
need
are
to.
not there, they don't have this luxury. Either they're going to go into a meeting and then, like, have you ever been to a meeting, you remote and everybody else in office? It sucks. Really sucks. You cannot see the people, like clearly you can't
Yeah,
move your stuff. It's not the metaverse yet. So like you feel like you're kind of cast away and you don't get as much information as the people that are
absolutely.
there. So it ends up being information poor for both folks. So the in-office people, they're gonna start to be mad because they don't get all of the information from the out-of-office people. Hey, I've tried to call you and you were not there. Yeah, I was like driving my kid to the school because I'm remote today, so I can do that. Yeah, but I need this information. Okay, but I'm just gonna write. You just send me an email. Okay, but I need now. I don't have time to do this type of stuff. And then the people that are remote, like the hybrid style, they're gonna look at the Slack. Nothing is happening today. They're like, okay, what's up? And then they receive like a tons of meeting. They go into a meeting and then they stay at home, but like they have like their whole block there. They don't function that well. So it's a very, very poor experience, and it's nowhere near what you get in terms of freedom, in terms of like um, uh, uh, liberty to do your work and do your work good in a fully remote setup. So that's it. The problem is in this instance, it's purely information, and I think there's no way, in my opinion, to reconcile well in this type in the manufacturing sector when you have like these folks and these folks. And what I think we should do, if we come back to salespeople, procurement folks, marketing folks, you have to get the folks that actually like to be in office, and it's not everybody. Some people will enjoy the freedom and blah 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 to be fully remote. Fantastic. Go sell software, procure in software, or in companies that are doing this, and then and that don't need to be physically there. Go there, right? But if you like that, if you like to drive and then go there and then meet other people and be in this environment, um, find people like this and actually try to find them, right? By exclusively filtering out people that want to be remote. And this needs to be intentional. Otherwise, you're going to get folks that are coming there for the perk, and then it sucks for them, and they're going to leave. So this needs to be super intentional, just like in a fully remote setup. You need to be intentional who you're going to let in. If you have someone that like, hey, I want to meet people in office, and then or let's meet in coffee shop like every day, this person will be miserable. they will be miserable in this kind of asynchronous, kind of documentation heavy type of environment. So
Right.
that's
Right.
my
Cool.
thought on that.
Cool. So I kind of see you sort of side with Elon on this a bit, right? He sort of pushes it for, especially in the manufacturing. I guess it definitely makes sense. Okay. Next question
Well, just to
is
correct here,
sure.
in Elon's side, I think I side with him for Tesla and SpaceX. I think that's fantastic what he built
Right.
as a I
Culture
mean,
as a
as an
company.
office culture. I don't know like the
Yeah.
exact like intricacy of it. Like maybe it's toxic. I don't know. But
Right.
in the case of Twitter,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think it's kind of a mistake. I think it's
Okay.
kind of a mistake. But I know that they run on a very very old infrastructure, which like they actually have servers. So
Right.
in their case, they're not like purely cloud. There's stuff.
Right.
There are people that
Right.
need to go there and babysit. I don't know
Right.
the extent of it, but in my view, slashing the remote on
Right.
Twitter might be like a big mistake that we'll see maybe in the future. I don't know.
Right.
But in case
Right.
of SpaceX and Tesla, which they have to manufacture things, I think
Right.
that the intentional in-office culture was a good move.
Mm. Okay, cool. Now I'll give you another tricky situation, which is, and this is why I can imagine a lot of executives think about are thinking about the site, especially manufacturing executives, which is okay. I removed the hybrid, and everybody hated it, right? Because they're friends, they have this ability to go and work from I don't know New York City, Sao Paulo, wherever they want, and now I work for company X, and just because I work for company X, I have to be in the office, and it absolutely sucks. But like you said, hybrid. I guess it's quite clear, but hybrid doesn't work. So, what can sort of leaders do or executives do to create a good office culture for manufacturing companies, right? Like we take the conversation into that direction, and then I also want to touch about like for software companies, what would be a good way to create a good remote culture. You talked a little bit about asynchronous, synchronous communication. So first, two-part question. First, in office manufacturing, how do you create a good culture? And then second one is how do you create a good remote culture?
Yeah. So this is a very very good question, because this is what we're he said the person said exactly the same thing. Like, okay, cool. So let's not do hybrid. What do I do then? Like what you're telling me? You make it as awesome as possible to be in office. I think this is the first thing. And it's gonna be more awesome if there's more people. If it's truly hybrid, you're going hybrid, what will happen is that people will feel disconnected and the office will look dead. Right? I've been in these hybrid offices for even some big companies and in big banks. There's no one there, right? So why even have the office? If you cannot have it, don't have it. But if you have to, like then it becomes like a drag. You take your car, you go over there, it sucks, there's no one, and then you get out. Even if you're an office person, you're gonna say like, hey man, I'll work for somebody else like that, have more of like a vibrant culture, right? And then the exec will like, hey, how do I make my culture more vibrant and stuff? Like cut the hybrid that is not going well, and commit to something. And then when you're gonna commit here, you're gonna have to do some filtering on the people. Get the people that like to be there and motivate them yourself. Be on that office, right? So what it means is like the exec, you go there, CEO be there, right? The VPs be there. Everybody will be there in the office, and this is an amazing opportunity for everybody around. Because in a remote culture, you don't get that. I get the CEO or whatever to be there physically with you, but you can reach to them asynchronously, right? Or like you send them an invite, maybe they will accept it and stuff. But in office, you can walk to your president and just talk to him if you want to, right? So the first thing is you make this as awesome an experience and as intentional as possible. You make that happen, and you try to make it filter the folks. That's the two things that we'll do first. The third thing is you capitalize on the weakness of remote work. What do I mean by that? Is that if you look at very successful remote company, they usually don't have um, don't have lots of junior folks, right? And junior folks, like it depends on the kind, right? There's the kind of junior folks that we know folks like this, like they're junior, but like they have lifetime of experience in like some kind of software and stuff, and they're like researcher and they love it. It's Nikita I'm talking about. We had them in the podcast. So these kind of people like that are very driven, they will love it remote because they are already in this kind of environment where like, okay, I'm contributing this to this open source thing. I never met anyone, but I want to contribute. I like the stuff, right? But most junior folks that are people that are students that are starting their career, if they go into a fully remote company, they will struggle a lot because they don't have the same context as everybody that is more senior that have. So the onboarding will be more difficult. The communication, how to communicate in this type of environment, will be more difficult. If you're a very senior guy and then you go into a remote company, you already have a lot of context. So the only thing that you have to learn is like maybe how to communicate, and then you're good. But usually, if like you're a very senior guy in like software, you already know how all of that. So you will see that they're more senior dense than junior. But when you look at manufacturing company or like in-office company, one thing that they can absolutely capitalize on is to get more junior people and train them and then upskill them and have them have the best experience that they can have on being there. And these people will stay there for a while, right? Because they're learning like a lot. They're upskilling themselves. They see a path forward. While if they go and try to get a job in the remote company, they will sit there as kind of this distance and this lag and this slowness in growing. So that's the third thing I would say that an in-office company can do to make it absolutely more workable is to veer more into like, we're gonna train people and upskill them, and then the senior people that we have that loves office culture, they will be in this environment with a lot of energy. And this is what you need to set up properly, and this works. Like it's no secret. It was already working before, but by the force of the status quo, now that things have changed a bit and people have different expectation, kind of been shaken up a bit, but there's still a misunderstanding about like how to do it right. And I think this for in office is the way forward. Yeah, that was
Cool,
the first
perfect.
question. Any question on
Yeah.
the
So the second one, maybe we forgot it, is about like, okay, that's for working in office. How about remote? How do you, let's say you do have a company that has a huge software component, right? And it's kind of like separate from the hardware. So maybe like the company that does the software inside cars or something, which is, that's what you're focused. You're still in the manufacturing sector, but your main product is a software. So for them, I guess you had a strong position about remote being the way to go and not hybrid again. How can leaders in those companies create a good remote culture? What will be like the top 3, 4 things you think are absolutely necessary with remote? Because one of the things that's happened after the pandemic is like, remote was kind of like the cool thing during the times of pandemic, but as we got out of pandemic, not a lot of companies liked remote. They were like, hey, there's like more mental stress. There's so many meetings. There's this, there's that. And not everybody loved it. So based on your experience, what are the few must-haves for a remote company for it to be successful?
Yeah, well, first off, you have to check yourself if you can do that as an executive. If you like to be around people and like it won't work. You will hate it. Right? If you're the one that hates it, out of everybody else, you're gonna make it tank. It won't work. Right. So in my case, I have a strong positioning toward remote by the way of thing. I did almost all my PhD and my master kind of remotely, and it worked well. Right. I was able to produce a lot, and that's kind of just my personality. So when I knew that the pandemic was there and then it was really serious, we had the decision like, hey, do we want to go make it in office culture, which will be like delayed in time, or do we do like fully remote? And I was like, let's do it fully remote. Other people were on board. We did that. That's the first thing. You go for it. You don't try to like be in between. And I think this is the hesitation that is problematic when you're in between and then you don't. There's no clear direction about what the culture you're setting. That's bad. So that's the first thing. You go for it, and to make it work, there's a few things that you need that in office uh, might not be needed. So one thing is to be radically like transparent, and that's one of our core value at Axia. But you have to do that. You have to be like very very transparent in the communication. And in an in-office type of culture, you don't have to do that. Like in, let's say, Apple, which is famous for their like HQ and stuff. Um, One of their values is almost like secrecy. Like some teams don't know what the other teams are doing. They're kind of in their own bubble. It's fine. It's totally fine because it's working, right? And in office culture, you can have that and not have total transparency. And it's fine. It can work like this. But in a remote setting, if you don't have you have like a thing occluding the views and stuff, you're gonna get meetings because people want to know stuff, or like you're gonna say something and people are like, I didn't read that anywhere. Why we're doing this? Oh, and then you walk back your thought process. Well, if you make things more transparent from the get-go, anyone can poke around and find like the thought. And if they ask you a question, you can point them to the right thing, and by default they will have access to it. So don't try to run this via email, which is very difficult to get everybody on board. Try to make a communication vector that is kind of more transparent by default, where you can see other people kind of what they're saying and then how operations are running in different setups. So high visibility, this is what you need. You need on the communication stack, like your task things, you need to be like very transparent about that. Your documentation need to be kind of available for everybody. If like someone in product wants to know like, hey, I need to write like this release note, but like how it's going to be used, they're going to go into the process of the marketing department. They look at it and like, okay, it's kind of how that like on the end product. I understand I don't need to book a meeting with you. So that's the thing. This first thing is to be like super transparent. Second thing is you need to be like super objective centric. Right? It should not matter how many hours people are working. Right? Contractually, yes, but like it should not matter if someone takes 22 hours to do the job. You should not be mad to find this out. If you're telling them, I want this done, and then they did it in 22 hours, the rest of the time they're on the beach, it's fine. It should be fine that this is happening. And these people are struggling. Like they want to have like, hey, I'm paying you 40 hours. I want you on the seat for 40 hours. But that's just a problem with like what you're expecting from them. In office culture, people need to go there anyway, right? So I would say in this kind of setting, either like you can still have this objective centric, but you can make it work with just like a hour kind of view about the thing. Because if they have to commit 1 hour in, 1 hour out, well, at least make the hours count over there, right? And then just have the stuff. But in a remote culture, like you can log in any times you want, and you can still like go on a hike and think about your stuff and things like that. So yeah, like in a remote setting, you make it absolutely objective centric. So you have to kind of brush up your game in terms of objective and communicate that clearly. If you're very poor at this and poor at setting the vision and direction, people will wait and they will not be as good, and then you're gonna wonder why we're not pushing further. You're not pushing further because you haven't set any goalposts anywhere. Set them and then empower the right people and have them there. The third thing is rely heavily on senior folks, people that know what they're doing, that you can trust to like have context in their head, that are good at communicating asynchronously because of their experience. That's kind of what I would do first and foremost, like super like buy-in, super transparency, objective centric, and you get senior folks.
Okay, cool. That makes a lot of sense. Now, there's a few concerns about remote work, and I want to sort of touch up and get your perspective on it. And you will often hear stuff like, there's just something about water cooler conversations when two people from different departments just are going to grab a cup of coffee. They have a conversation, talk about what you're working on, and this sort of helps drives a lot of energy, helps people connect to each other. Yeah, and removes a lot of layers of friction. And then there's also something about when some people get together in a room and try to like solve a problem face to face. There's this kind of like impact or magic that happens. First, how do you recreate that in the remote world, or can you even recreate that in the remote world? And yeah, how do you sort of like when you're a fully remote company and people are in different parts of the world, how do you make sure that this is also sort of happening properly? Because another thing that can happen if you have a lot of meetings or even if you have a lot of asynchronous communication, us as human beings or emotional creatures, we sort of like start to feel that disconnect. So what are some of the things you can do to counter that?
Very good point. And it comes down to the type of folks you're getting, right? There is a spectrum. Some people don't want to see anybody, right? Should you hire them only? Maybe not. Some people want to see everybody every day, all the time, right? There's a whole spectrum in there. That these folks, yeah, they should not, absolutely not get into remote. If they have like every day I need to meet someone and then like from my office and be talking to them, you take that person and you redirect them to a in-office type of culture, and the people are in office, you get these folks, right? Those that are pumped, take their car, go somewhere and be with people all the time, right? um and then there's the other people which like don't need that many interaction, right? And to function, right? We still all need interaction to be like fully complete human beings and have a culture that works. So even fully remote company, they will do meetings and get-togethers. Remote doesn't equate being at home alone like all your life, right? That's not what this is about. It's the freedom to do your work however you want. That's really what remote is, right? That's all there is. We could all be remote and living on the same block. That would still work, right? So the thing here, you have to understand that the more the thing is fragmented, right? The more you need people like on the I don't want to meet anyone anytime, anywhere, right? If you have one person at each country in the world, you will need to have more of these people. If you have a hub, right, where people could theoretically meet together, you can veer more into the side of I don't need to meet like people often, but I still like to meet people. This is realistically, if you're trying to make a big company, that's what will happen, right? If you have a project with like 5 specialists, you get these folks. Like you get only these folks that will work, right? But if you have to hire a kind of a massive person, you will have to build your company around hubs where people can kind of meet together, at least to satisfy this basic need in this gradient. And to my point, these folks that don't mind to meet together to work stuff out, they always existed in software. The most used and powerful open source software are made by people that don't even know their name. They don't even know they like the other folks. It's a purely, hey, I just want to work on this stuff and I don't need to know you. Let's just work together and get this done, and I can use that for whatever my purpose is, right? That's on the complete extreme, and it's fine. It's working, and it's working very well. Now, can you build a full company like this? I would say it's a bit too risky. I would veer more into like this hub structure and grow the company like this. This is the first thing. The second thing is that you should encourage people to meet together, right? If you have hubs, you should encourage people to meet together, and they should like be so encouraged that they kind of meet spontaneously for like, hey, I want to take coffee, and then take the coffee together, or like there's a bunch of dinner that take place, or like there's some meeting that take place. That's absolutely crucial. And whenever you have something a very thorny problem, right? You get people in the same room and you work on the strategy together. And this, you can do it on a quarterly basis. Let's say with the manager, you fly people somewhere and you do that. um, uh, and that's kind of it. And then and in a purely remote setting, I would say once or twice a year you fly everybody and then you put them into a same retreat for like a week to create this kind of connection. Even if like you don't like meeting people often, this one time you'll be like, cool. And then this will satisfy everybody in this mesh, this network of people for the year at least. And then they will go back to their hubs and then they work together. That's kind of I've read a lot about it, and that's kind of the best way to create to reduce your risk of creating a remote culture that kind of crumble into itself.
So last parting question, Yasin. What is one piece of advice you would give to supply chain and manufacturing executives about this whole remote work? Specifically around, let's say they have two types of departments and they're separate from each other, so they don't really need to be together. What's kind of like one or two piece of parting advice you'd give these executives?
Yeah, you really have, like, in my opinion, you have two choices, right? Either you do the work and then you create this in-office culture, and then you bring people in procurement and whatever other sector that could technically be outside of your company, and then you find these people that like that are on the spectrum of I want to see people every day, and you make it nice enough so that people want to come and then they have a good time, right? You do that, or you outsource these functions. And I think it's important because if you're doing the hybrid thing and people start to feel disconnected, you will get that. You will get as if you were outsourcing these folks and then they're just separate from the company. So if this happens anyway, because you can't find a pool of, I don't know, procurement specialists in your area, you will be better off outsourcing this somewhere and treating these people as external. Because then your actual people that are in your company that only focus on your company will know that there's not an external party that is just like absolutely random, um, and they will not be as 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 uh, bothered by the fact that a function is outside. I think that's really the two main choice that you have, and it's a valid one, like to be outsourcing this function, and this kind of discussion about like hey, what do we do if like things are external, like big corporation, they always see that they've been dealing with these problems forever, right? Even if you have an office, right, at some point there's maybe many office all around the world, and what ends up happening is that there's a we versus us that is always happening normally into like a in office kind of culture, because then you have two branches, and what end up happening is that these branches are kind of separate from each other distinctly. You'll see the people from here and the people from there, and they have a different type of culture. It's kind of normal to have that, right? Yes, we should strive to get this mesh a bit together, but it's absolutely normal to have it this way. So if you have to do that with your function, I would say go ahead. I will still say that you should think about it more of working on communication all the time, whether it's in office or like remote or whatnot. The communication need to be clear, even more so if you're more global and you have these different branches. If you have that, you have the different branches, like one problem scope at a time, right? You're better dealing with the scope of, like, let's say the England people and then the Germany people that kind of have difficulty understanding each other. Good, that's a good problem. But if the Germany people within themselves have problem understanding each other, that's a big issue. Solve this first, and then for the more global thing, that's another a whole other discussion I think we can have.
Yeah, definitely. I think that some of the tips you gave around communication, they work both ways. So yeah, like I guess it's actually, if you look at companies that are working in multiple branches, this branch is remote to the other branch in a way, right? So all of those
Exactly.
things
Yeah.
sort of like start to clear a bit. All right, thank you so much, Yasin. That's all the time that we have today. It was a very, very interesting chat. If you guys have any questions or anything you would like to ask, please feel free to reach out to Yasin on LinkedIn or me. And yeah, stay tuned, hit subscribe to get any updates as soon as we release a new episode. And yeah, have a wonderful day.